So, more than 20 years ago, a few students saw a movie. In this movie, they saw a student team racing on the sun. They thought, we also want to do this. So they started their own team and wanted to compete in the World Championships in Australia. But before they did this, they needed a team coach. So they went to Wubbo Ockels, who's the first Dutch astronaut. He said, I want to do it, but on one condition. I want to win. And so they did. I'm Volker, this is Salinda, and together we will lead the technical team of the next team, who will also build a new solar car.
So we're a team of 17 students, all from the TU Delft, and we have chosen to put our studies on hold for a year to focus on building a solar car. So we're in the technical management, but we have all different departments working together to one goal, and that is to win the Solar Challenge in Australia next year. I actually had the chance to join the previous team in South Africa and just came back a couple of weeks ago. And during that race, I actually saw coming together what the team had worked for the whole year. Not only the technical part, but also the protocols everyone practiced on, the teamwork, and together they made it come together and won the challenge. So we're from the new team, and we're working very hard in our office in Delft right now to achieve the exact same with our new team of 17 students.
So after we've won the first race in 2001, we competed a few more times in the World Championships, and we won 7 times. Furthermore, we've competed 4 times in South Africa and won all of those, so we have a pretty good track record. We build a new car every other year, and the years between it, we are mostly focusing on R&D. But each car has its own story.
And one story I actually like very much is our third car that we built. It was so fast that it drove to the first control stop, the checkpoint halfway during the race, and it arrived there before it was even set up. We drove so fast, the organization hadn't expected us yet. So they waited for 30 minutes, left a note, and left again. And that car actually still holds the current record for driving the fastest during that race. Then many years of success followed after that. And it all seemed to go very well. But then our 10th car actually didn't go so well. Couldn't all go right. And what happened in 2017 was that our car caught fire. With less than 300 kilometers to go, this is what was remaining of our car. So the students saw disappear in front of their eyes what they worked on for over a year, day and night, and they saw that disappear within a couple of minutes. And that was definitely a setback for our organization. To see that happen right in front of you and to actually have to follow that was a very hard thing to do for the team following. So they were faced with an enormous challenge. They had no car to improve, and they were starting right at the start of the COVID pandemic. But they didn't give up. They actually took the car that was developed the year before. They saw what they could improve on that one and made it into a better car. And they actually set a world record driving that car, which I think shows the great resiliency that the team has enjoyed over the years. And we love to build on this legacy that has been going on for over 20 years. But we actually are focusing most on our race, and that is coming up about this time next year in Australia. And this is a challenge in multiple ways. So the race is taking us from Darwin to Adelaide, and the challenge is to drive this as quickly as possible, to be the first one to cross that finish line in Adelaide. But it's not only a challenge in the sense that you have to drive very far only using solar power, but you also have to think about the circumstances you're racing in. It's extremely hot, and especially in the cockpit, the driver has to be able to endure temperatures rising over 50 degrees Celsius, all the while remaining focused to actually drive the car in a safe manner. Because what happens is that with a car weighing only 130 kilograms, it's very hard to actually maneuver it well, especially with a gust of wind that can happen in Australia. So this is definitely a challenge in multiple ways, and we are aiming to now build the best car to endure this challenge. But it's good to keep in the back of our minds that this is merely a way to achieve our mission. And this mission is to inspire the world for sustainability and innovation. Our end goal is not to win the race. Our end goal is to actually show what can be done with innovation and what can be done with solar power for sustainability. So to highlight the first part of our mission, I would like to share a story that I actually experienced myself when I was in South Africa. And I was waiting at one of the checkpoints where the cars come in, and I was standing there with my orange shirt next to a father who was watching that spot with his two little daughters. And I heard one of them say when our car drove in, "I want to drive that one." And that sort of made me very happy that the new generation is also enthusiastic about what we make and that they see this car and they, for one, actually notice that it is a car, but also think it's prettier and sounds nicer than the cars they've seen all their lives. So we want to make people imagine, they want to make people imagine a world beyond the fossil-fueled cars. Then regarding sustainability, we always focus on actually improving the sustainability of our car, not only in the small, also in the small details. So for example, we switched to a new panel that's actually better for the environment. But more than that, I still find it amazing that you can drive across Australia using power only provided by the sun. And I think this is the major story we're trying to spread. And regarding the innovation part, we actually quite frequently get questions about whether after more than 20 years of work, we're still able to innovate. And the short answer is yes, we are. And as our team is very small and innovation driven, we want to actually build the craziest ideas if they hold potential. So what happened a couple of years ago was that students came up with the idea of using energy not only provided by the sun, but also by the wind. They saw that our performance actually was reduced when the winds came from the side. But then they also came up with the vision of making it more like a sailing boat. So if you design it in a smart way, the shape, you can make side winds work in your advantage. So they did, and right now we're not only driving in the sun, but also in a way sailing on the wind. And I think that's a great example of how we're able to innovate even in small details. And with that, I'd like to pass on to Volkert, who will share more about the role of analytics in our process.
So now comes the part where also a bit of AI and all of our analytics come into play for developing our new car and how our older cars were developed. So first of all, one of our key winning factors is our aerodynamics. So the car has to be it has to be developed with as least drag as possible. So what we do, we draw it in a 3D program on a sub-millimeter scale. So it's very, very, very precise. Now, when we've done that, we want to know how aerodynamic is it precisely. So a computer can't just generate this image with values just randomly assigned. So what we do, we actually have to split the whole car up into tiny pieces, which we call meshing. But the problem is, the smaller you make those pieces, the longer it takes to calculate the values. So we have some algorithms which can precisely determine how large each piece needs to be to get the most accurate results as possible, but also that our calculations run as smoothly as possible. So you can see one of those pictures right here. So when our aerodynamic department has actually designed our car, we want to make it as light as possible, because weight just adds time, it makes our car slower. We also need to make it strong, because we carry a battery which is very dangerous when not handled carefully. So what you can see here in this slide is actually a simulation if our car rolls over. So the red part is actually where the pressure is distributed. And then we want to calculate, okay, how does it work when it's distributed through the whole car? Again, for this, we also need to mesh it. So we distribute the car again in tiny pieces, and the force is distributed through the whole car, and we see if any part breaks. If it does, we need to make it stronger. Now, if we've done that, we've built basically the car, but we still need to power it, because it's a solar car. So here our electronics department comes in. Well, so we start with a whole simulation of the whole race. So we have all the data from previous races, how the sun is, how much clouds there are. So we simulate the whole race with also each solar ray and each solar cell, which you can see in this slide. One thing about this is that we have a canopy where the driver is sitting, and it puts shade on the panel. And we don't want shade, we just want sun. So what we do, we bypass those cells with diodes. But the more diodes we add, the more complex it gets. So we also have an algorithm which can precisely determine where those diodes need to be placed to keep it as simple as possible, but also as efficiently as possible. Now, our electronics departments have precisely determined how much energy we're going to get during the race. But the weather is always unpredictable. So during the race, we actually have another car which drives in front of a solar car which collects real-time data. This is sent back to a car driving behind our solar car, which is actually the kind of the brains of the whole operation. They take this real-time data, and two guys in the back are constantly updating this. And this is also where AI comes in, because it's so much different data that we actually need AI to process this as quickly as possible. And how do those guys experience that, Linda, in South Africa?
Yeah, so they are basically sort of locked in the back of their car. They have screens surrounding them on all sides, and they probably drank more coffee than I do in a year time, but they succeeded, so.
Now, we've built the whole car, made strategy, but we also need to market it. And this is actually not a photo, it's a 3D render. And it's actually amazing to see how algorithms can be used to render these as quickly as possible. Now, we can only do this with a lot of computing power. So that's why we've partnered up with HP for the last years, and we'll also continue to do for the next year. So what will be our goal for the next year?
Yeah, so 367 days from now, we will have just started our first race day, which is kind of crazy to imagine. Since we have no car yet, it's currently still on computers in our office, but we do have 17 motivated people working on a car, and we believe we can be the first one to cross that finish line. Thank you for your attention.
Congratulations, both of you, and thank you very much for that insightful description of what you're planning to do in Australia. It's really fascinating. Let's just check if we have any questions from the audience. Please raise your hands high in the air as we've been doing, and a microphone will come to you if you have any questions for our pair here. One here in the central row, please, if we can get a microphone. Thank you.
Just curious, do you guys have to charge during the race, or is it are the solar panels so efficient that you can just go the full race with that and the battery?
It's actually a very interesting question. We get this question a lot. But it's due to the regulations, it's only allowed to use solar power. So we can't plug in the car like you would with a normal road car. We can only use, as it's stated by the regulations, use power by the sun, or we can use power, be powered by the wind, as Alinda previously explained.
Comprehensive answer. Do we have any more questions? We do, just at the back there in the central row.
One obvious difference between the cars that you presented was that you moved the cockpit from the center to the side. Do you develop such insights by yourself, or do you use AI in any way?
So those were actually come up with the students themselves, more sort of logical thinking, in a sense that we want to maximize our output from the solar panels, and placing it to the sides would reduce the casting of shade on the panels. So that was actually not generated by AI. The shapes, however, are partly generated by that, since we use a loop for the aerodynamic shape. So that is partly generated for the aerodynamic engineer. So that makes their life a little easier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Testing my eyesight here, in which case we will give our pair a round of applause. Thank you ever so
Thank you.
much. And just before we want to break for lunch, I want to let you know that strong women and people who support strong women should head to track 5 now, where Professor Sue Black, OBE of Durham University, is currently leading a roundtable. She's a computer science professor and tech evangelist, a brilliant speaker. Do head there now to catch the rest of that. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up for lunch now. You can find food and drinks in the hall behind you. Just a reminder of what the afternoon sessions look like. We're going to be closing with a plenary exploring data science in context with Peter Norvig. And we'll also be talking about the future of the workplace with Stefano Lavere, Amazon's Global Director of Advanced Robotics Technology. So much more to come. Enjoy lunch, and we'll see you at 2:30. Thank you.